Now we will talk about the age of the great goddess, which lasted for maybe 25,000 years of human history, where woman, the creator of life, mysterious. They did not yet know that the penis and sperm had anything to do with it, but she was the creator of life. And so she was mysterious, more than human. She had to be God. The power and centrality of the first woman god is one of the best kept secrets of history. The prevalence of the great mother goddess is an essential element from the dawn of human life. But she was not just a provider of carnal delights. Equally relished and revered were her warlike rages. She was the creator of life, and she was the creator of death. Before the process of reproduction was understood, babies were simply born to women. No connection was made with intercourse. So arose the belief that woman was divine, not human, gifted with the most sacred and significant power in the world. And so was born the worship of the Great Mother. The birth of new life out of woman's body was intricately related to the birth of new crops out of the body of the earth. And from the very first, both were interlocked in the concept of a female divinity far more complex and powerful than conventional accounts suggests, the godmother of the country. But the overemphasis on the good mother, procreative and nurturing, also denies the bad mother, her dangerous, dark, and destructive opposite. The early civilizations, however, understood very well the strong association of the divine woman with death, and stressed that the goddess who brings humankind into the world is also she who kindly, or not so kindly, commands the way out of it. In her darkest incarnation, the bad mother did not simply wait for people to die, but demanded their death. So both life and death sides of the goddess come together without strain in her primary aspect, which is in fact not motherhood pure and simple, but her sexuality. As her primary sexual activity, she created life, but in sex, she demanded man's essence, his self, even his death. Here again, the true nature of the goddess and her activities have fallen victim to the mealy-mouthed prudery of later ages. When referred to at all, they clearly are labeled fertility rituals, beliefs, or totems, as if the great goddess selflessly performed her sexual obligations solely in order to ensure that the earth would be fruitful. It's time to set the historical record straight. The fruitfulness of crops and animals was only ever a byproduct of the goddess's own personal sexual activity. Her sex was hers, the enjoyment of it hers. And as all these early accounts of her emphasized, when she had sex like any other sensible female, she had it for herself, but not by herself. In every culture, the goddess has many lovers. This exposes another weakness in our later understanding of her role as the Great Mother. To the children of patriarchy, mother always includes wife. Mother is the woman who's married to father. That puts a further constraint on the idea of the good mother. She doesn't fuck around. She doesn't even choose the one man she does have, but she's chosen by the father. And so this is not exactly how it was at all. The Great Mother originally held the ultimate power. She was the undisputed ruler of life and death. Where woman is the divine queen, the king must die. And I guess a man does sort of die in sex because he emerges limp and lifeless, his penis flaccid, he's spent. While she, and you ladies know this, we can still keep fucking. We're full of vigor and vitality. We're not depleted by sex. We're not depleted by orgasm the way the man is. So the man dies a slow death in sex. In fact, in the goddess age, the goddess was in charge of the kingdom, and the kings were beneath her, and they merely existed to serve her. And she could have them put to death if she wanted. I don't think that's very nice. I'm not saying that that's what she should have done, but that's kind of how they did it. Mythologically, okay, the Great Mother originally held the ultimate power, the power of the undisputed ruler, that of life and death. Where woman is the divine queen, the king must die. Mythologically and historically, to the rampant sensuality of the great goddess and her taste for blood unite in the archaic but undisputed practice of the killing of the king. King is an honorary title for the male chosen to fuck the queen goddess in a simple reenactment of the primal drama, which was subsequently described by historians and anthropologists as the sacred marriage. At the time when all life was thought to flow into, through, and out of the female, the highest hope of the male was to escape the fate of all the other disposable drones and associate with the deity, even at the price of then being returned to earth. Mythologically, the ritual sacrifice of the young king is attested to in 1,000 versions of the story. The lover is always inferior to the goddess, mortal where she is immortal, young where she is ageless and eternal, powerless where she is all-powerful and even physically smaller. All these elements combine in the frequent representation of the lover as the goddess's younger brother or son, and always, always he dies. Within recorded history, versions of the killing of the king frequently occur. In real terms, however, the average man does not seem to have had much to fear from the goddess or her worship. In a culture where the supreme deity is female, the focus is on women. So, for instance, the special magic of women's sexuality, from her mysterious menstruation to her gift of producing new life, is expressed in the widespread practice through the period of goddess worship of treating certain sacred grave burials with red ochre. So they used the menstrual blood as a special sacred substance on burial sites and to help with crops and so on. The Greek custom of mixing the menstrual blood with seed corn for annual sowing is to provide the best possible fertilizer. This open veneration of women's natural rhythms and monthly flow contrasts strangely with the secret shame and curse that they later became. But when God was a woman, all women and all things feminine enjoyed a higher status than has ever been since in most countries of the world. Matriarchy is better understood as a form of social organization that is woman-centered, substantially egalitarian, and where it is not considered unnatural or anomalous for women to hold power and to engage in all the activities of the society alongside the men. Matriarchies abounded, and even societies clearly under the rule of men displayed strong matriarchal features in the forms of freedom since lost and never regained by the vast number of women in the state of world advancement that we know today. Women held power to which men habitually deferred. The power of the goddess was inherited, passed from mother to daughter in a direct line. A man only became king when he married the source of power. He could not be a king in his own right. Women owned and controlled money and property. For example, in Sparta, the women owned 2/3 of the land. Arab women owned flocks, which their husbands merely pastured for them. In Egypt, a woman's financial independence of her husband was such that if he borrowed money from her, she could even charge him interest. Marriage contracts respected women's rights as individuals and honored them as partners. A number of codes akin to that of the Hammurabi explicitly contradict the chattel status that marriage later meant for women. In Babylon, if a man degraded his wife, she could bring an action for legal separation from him on the grounds of cruelty. If divorce occurred, women retained care and control of their children, and the father was obliged to pay for their upbringing. Women enjoyed physical freedoms. Also, there were regiments of women fought as men. Now, this is another interesting point, where we always say, like, women are so frail. But women actually were encouraged to be strong, and we are strong. You wouldn't know that from today's age, how women are like the weaker sex and so on, but they actually fought alongside men in battle. In the early classical period, Greek girls led a free, open-air life and were given athletic and gymnastic training to promote both fitness and beauty. In Crete, chosen young women trained as toreras to take part in the ritual bull leaping, while Ionian women joined in boar hunts, nets and spears at the ready. Across thousands of Attic vases, Grecian urns to Keats, girl jockeys race naked or dance and swim unclothed through millennia of silence and slow time. Here's a little poem. The daughters of Sparta are never at home. They mingle with the young men in wrestling games. Their clothes cast off, their hips all naked. It's shameful. The strength and athletic abilities of these young women was not simply fostered for fun, as the story of the Roman heroine Cloelia shows. She escaped, stole a horse, and swam the Tiber to get safely back to Rome. The hardening of young women's bodies by sport and the regular practice of nudity had wider implications than these sporadic acts of personal daring. There is scattered but abundant evidence throughout the ancient world of women under arms, fighting as soldiers in the frontline engagements that conventional wisdom decrees have always been reserved for men. Ruling queens led their troops in the field, not as ceremonial figureheads, but as acknowledged and effective war leaders. And she has a lot of examples in this book, which I'm not going to read, but the historical reality of women fighting can no longer be doubted. Poets, priests, queens, mothers, lovers, athletes, soldiers, and litigious courtesans, as the first individual women emerged to take their place in human history, present an impressive spectacle. No one had yet told them that women were physically weak, emotionally unstable, or intellectually ill-equipped. These were real women then, vividly alive even at the moment of death, women who knew their strengths. These strengths were recognized in the range of social customs and legal rights known to be women's due from a mass of historical evidence: physical and sexual freedom, access to power, education, full citizenship, the right to own money and property, the right to divorce, custody of children, and financial maintenance. And this age lasted from, the age of the goddess lasted from 25,000 BC until 500 AD. So in 500 AD, the Christian emperors forcibly suppressed the worship of the goddess and closed down her last temples. So that was like around 25,000 years. But now, this was a great imbalance, right? It is a great imbalance because they see women as goddess, but they don't see men as an equal, as a god. So it was not fair. I would say it wasn't fair. And so when things are unfair, it's the nature of life to create a balance again. Now, Where was man in the primal drama of the worship of the Great Mother? He was the expendable consort, the sacrificial king, the disposable drone. Woman was everything and he was nothing. It was too much. Male pride rose to take up the challenge of female power, and launching the sex war that was to divide sex and societies for millennia to come, man sought to assert his manhood through the death and destruction of all that had made woman the great mother, goddess, warrior, lover, and queen. And that is the rise of the phallus. So as human beings crossed the mental threshold between interpreting events in symbolic and magical terms and the dawning realization of cause and effect, man's part in the making of babies became clear. As the male had been cheated for centuries, historian Jean Markdale sums it up, equality was not enough. He now understood the full implication of his power, and he was going to dominate. And what better weapon of dominance was there at hand but the phallus? As man began to carve out some meaning for himself to set against women's eternal innate potency, what would serve his turn better than man's best friend, his penis, in its fragile human form, prey to unbidden arousal, stubborn refusal, and unpredictable deflation? It could not challenge women's unfailing power of birth, but elevated above reality into symbol, transformed into phallus, and enshrined in materials known to be proof against detumescence like metal and stone, it would do very well. Now, that doesn't mean that people didn't always make the connection between the penis and conception, because even 3,500 years ago, phallic symbols had made their appearance. So paradoxically, it was the great goddess herself who first established the cult of the phallus. The goddess had ordered a wooden lingam of Osiris, and it goes on and on. No country in the world, however, embraced phallus worship with more enthusiasm than India. With its rise to sacred status, the phallus increased in significance as well as in size and sanctity. And guys still have this thing about wanting a big cock, like it's some sort of a power thing. And the phallic symbols are still a thing, right? So, from the epoch onward, male superiority becomes vested in and expressed through this one organ as an ever-present reminder of masculine power. By extension, and the extension was limitless, the phallus then becomes the source not only of power, but of all cultural order and meaning. Now, mythologies are never static, so there was some intermingling, as the goddess, great mother and goddess kind of came on her way out, and the phallus came in, there was definitely some intermingling. It wasn't like a smooth line. Then also, in the group's nomadic wanderings and any fighting that resulted, men had the advantage as they had superior muscle power and mobility over women encumbered with children. Whatever form it takes, the fundamental power shift from female to male is reflected in all mythologies. But it wasn't just a mythological theme. Women of power in real life came under attack as men sought to wrest from them their authority in a number of ways. When royalty passed through the female line, a bold adventurer could commandeer it by enforcing marriage on the queen or seizing possession by rape. Women were no longer the vessel of nature creating man. Now man created woman as a vessel for himself. Now that's interesting. I'm going to read that again. Because during the goddess age, woman was the vessel of nature and she created man. But now man created woman as a vessel for himself. And I think a lot of men still think of women as a vessel for themselves, as a sexual plaything for themselves. Under the new dispensation, women's rights went the way of their rights, and in cities and states from Peking to Peru, women dwindled into little more than serfdom. They became property and found that truly property was theft. The new social and mental systems robbed them of freedom, autonomy, control, and even the most basic right of control over their own bodies. For now, they belong to men, or rather, to one man. At some unidentified but pivotal point of history, women became subjected to the tyranny of sexual monopoly. For once it was realized that one man only was necessary for impregnation, it was a short step to the idea of only one man. Yet the exclusive possession of a woman and the monopoly of her sexual service could always be waived when a greater need arose. In Eskimo tribes, for instance, wife lending is endemic. For the Eskimo husband, this is a wise investment for the future because the lender knows he will eventually be a borrower when he needs a woman who makes the igloo habitable, lays out dry stockings for him, and is ready to cook the game he brings back. Nor was this all. The extent of the obligations of the borrowed wife can be judged from the special term by which Eskimo children refer to any man who does business with their father. He who fucks my mother. So when these Eskimo women are having sex with other men, it's not because they want to, it's because the husband says, you're going to do it. So the woman has become property. From written records, epics, and chronicles come examples of sexual hostility in action frequently carried to extremes. Women are traded, enslaved, ravished, sold in whoredom, slaughtered on the death of their lord or husband, and in every way abused at will. As societies evolved, male control through brutal force was gradually supplemented by the rule of law. Now, women could win membership in the ruling elite if they had access to men who wielded it, in a direct reversal of the previous rule of the matriarchies. So, women slipped into this power by associating with men who had the power. They could also excel in political skill, and then there's also a section saying that personal achievement was always possible, like that there were women who tried to have personal achievement in spite of the obstacles given to them. That they were also heroines who tamed brutal or stupid husbands, outwitted rapacious lords, schemed for their children, and lived to rejoice in their children's children. But that was not enough for man, because his domination was not absolute and systems were imperfect. There was still too much room to maneuver. Control of women could not be based on an organ that men could not control, their ever-deflating penis. Sorry, guys, but once your erection is gone, you're kind of useless. Sexually, you're useless. And to me, men that aren't hard are useless to me. I'm going to be, not you guys, but when I see men in sexual terms, once their penis is deflated, they're useless. Can't fuck them anymore. That's how I see it. And so what does man do? There had to be more, an idea of immanent, eternal maleness that was not physical, visible, fallible, one that was greater than all women because greater than man, whose power was omnipotent and unquestionable. One God, God the Father, who man now invented in his own image. And that will be the next video.